The rain hammered against the glass windows of the penthouse like urgent fists, as if the sky itself was trying to warn him. Billionaire Ethan Caldwell lay on the velvet couch in his living room, his eyes firmly shut, his breathing steady and controlled, not because he was sleeping, but because he wanted someone to believe he was. Moments earlier, he had instructed the entire staff to leave early, except for one, Rosa, the maid who had worked for him for 7 years, and her 11-year-old daughter, Sophia. Rosa needed the money, so she often stayed late, and tonight, Ethan had asked her to bring the girl because of the storm. Now, while Rosa cleaned the kitchen, Sophia wandered quietly through the grand home, unaware that Ethan was pretending to sleep. He wanted to see something. He wasn't even sure what. Maybe loyalty. Maybe temptation. Maybe the truth about human nature. Everything in his life was a transaction. He believed kindness was a mask and honesty was a luxury only the poor couldn't afford to hide. But as he lay there, eyes closed, he had no idea that the next 5 minutes would shatter everything he thought he knew. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, honesty, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe right now to support Stories with a Heart. Your engagement helps us tell more powerful stories. The room smelled of cinnamon from Rosa's late attempt to cook something warm for her daughter. Ethan could hear the small footsteps of Sophia approaching, hesitant and light, like she was afraid of disturbing even the air around her. She stopped near him, and for a moment, Ethan felt the warm presence of innocence. He expected her to touch his watch, or phone, or maybe slip something into her pocket. Instead, he heard the sound of quiet breathing and then a soft whisper that made a crack form in the invisible armor around his heart. She said she prayed he would get better soon. Ethan almost opened his eyes immediately, but he forced himself to stay still. Why would a child pray for him? He wasn't sick. He had told Rosa he had a terrible migraine only to create a situation. But Sophia didn't know it was a lie. In her mind, the billionaire who barely spoke to anyone was hurting, and all she had was a whisper of hope to offer. After a moment, Sophia walked away, and Ethan heard the shuffle of something being placed on the coffee table. Then she returned, her steps slower, and he felt a small hand gently covering his. The touch was so light it barely existed, but it carried more truth than every handshake he had ever made in his billion-dollar boardrooms. Her hand trembled slightly, and then she let go. Ethan waited until he heard her leave, then he opened his eyes. On the table was a single folded napkin, and on it sat her mother's old silver ring. It was worn, scratched, and clearly precious. Under it was a piece of torn notebook paper with a childish handwriting that read, "For medicine if you need. Mama says God gives more when we share." Ethan stared at the paper. He was speechless. The little girl had nothing except this ring, and she offered it without hesitation, thinking he was suffering. No conditions. No motives. Just compassion. His throat tightened unexpectedly. He had tested a child the way he used to test businessmen, and she returned a lesson he didn't deserve. When Rosa and Sophia finally prepared to leave, Ethan rose, his voice cracking despite his attempt to keep it calm. He told Rosa the storm was too dangerous and he would have a car take them home safely. Rosa thanked him politely, unaware of what had happened earlier. Sophia stood near the door, shy, not looking up. Ethan walked to her and gently placed the ring back in her palm. She looked confused. He told her that her heart was more valuable than any treasure he owned, and he wanted her to keep it safe. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something break open inside him, not pain, but a realization. Wealth had protected him from need, but it had also built walls so high that he forgot what humanity looked like from the other side. He spent countless nights surrounded by gold, marble, and silence, convincing himself that love was a myth and loyalty was a lie. And here she was, an 11-year-old girl showing him more purity in a single gesture than all the people he trusted with millions. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in the living room, staring at the ring he had photographed before returning it to her, thinking about the years he spent believing generosity was foolish. He thought about the boy he once was, raised by parents who taught him nothing mattered more than kindness. Somewhere along the path of success, he buried that boy under contracts, ambition, and fear of betrayal. The next morning, Ethan did something he had never done before. He visited the old community center where Rosa often volunteered. He saw children playing with broken toys, mothers sewing worn clothes, and people who smiled despite carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. He made a decision, not an impulse, but a commitment. Within 2 weeks, Ethan created a foundation named after his late mother to support the education of underprivileged children. He knew Sophia would be the first beneficiary. Rosa cried when she learned her daughter had been granted a full scholarship and mentoring program. Sophia simply hugged Ethan so tightly that he felt her heartbeat against his chest. It was the most honest moment he had lived in years. The world never learned why Ethan Caldwell changed. Newspapers wrote stories about a billionaire suddenly dedicating his wealth to children's education. Analysts called it a strategy to improve his reputation. Critics called it a business move. But Ethan never spoke about the real reason. He didn't need to. Every time he saw Sophia smile, every time he visited the foundation and saw children holding books instead of hunger, he remembered one stormy night, one napkin note, one ring, and one prayer whispered by a little girl who believed in goodness even when the world had given her so little. As months passed, Ethan changed in ways he never imagined. The cold, distant billionaire learned to laugh again. He began spending less time counting profits and more time counting moments of gratitude. And quietly, without any announcement or pride, he kept a copy of Sophia's note framed in his office, hidden behind his desk, a reminder that sometimes the richest gift comes from the poorest hands. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more people can feel the power of compassion. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive. Speech balloon. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Sophia's place?